So, let's move on to a new section. Morality and policing. We've kind of already talked about it. One quote that I had here was one quote that I think I've brought up before. Was from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This was quoted from Letter to Birmingham Jail, I believe, and you can find that online. And the quote basically says that, how am I going to phrase this? It's essentially says, like, how can you follow some laws and disobey others? And King points out that there are just laws and unjust laws. I'll follow the just laws and break the unjust ones. And you have a moral responsibility to do so. And what that means in all this context is that, like we've said, is that a lot of the laws that police are upholding are property laws, and they will use whatever force necessary to suppress you from
You, the viewer.
Yes, you the person consuming this. The police can and will use any sort of force to prevent you from, I don't know, enjoying yourself. I mean, that's an argument.
Enjoying your drugs.
That's an argument a lot of the times used by some really out there anarchists of the police are just there to ruin my fun time of burning things to the ground. But I digress. As we kind of already brought this up, is that the police are a fraternal organization and they stand behind their fellow brother, their brother with a badge, and will uphold whatever whatever they do in their job. And I want to know what you two think about upholding what anyone does regardless of like who they are, what organization they're part of. Like one way that I would bring this up is or to change the idea of who we're talking about is if you guys knew a surgeon that intentionally fucked up one surgery every week, would you still support that surgeon if you guys were surgeons also?
Obviously not.
Yeah, because they're intentionally doing it, and then that carries on to police. Or let's do it in context of this podcast. If someone on this podcast like
Said the N-word.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. If someone on this podcast just went off and said it out of context or in a very hateful manner, would you guys stand by that?
No.
Yeah. Exactly. And
I don't stand by any member of Dick Proles using the N-word for any reason.
but that, and comparing that to police officers is, if we were police officers, if one of the Dick Proles police officer community members shot and killed someone, would you guys stand by them and say that what they did was justified? And like in terms of police, the answer is always yes, because they're upholding the law, and the person that they killed was disobeying the law.
And that's what it always comes down to.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes all the law that is being broken is disobeying the police officer themselves.
Yes.
Which is,
and like I was going to bring up, like Nick brought up with Eric Garner, he was selling loose cigarettes, a victimless crime. Who cares if you're selling loose cigarettes? Who cares that you want to know something about what the officer is doing? And the fact that then the officer went and killed you is bad.
Yeah.
And then the fact also that they rationalize it as they were on the other side of the thin blue line and we're on this side, and rationalizing it like that is just bad. We can get in, this would be a whole different topic of like the idea of law and order and whatnot, but the idea that people on the other side of the thin blue line that are against the police officers are immoral and are criminals, all of them, and are, I don't know, fucking rapists that want to just go out and rape everyone is wrong.
yeah.
Just because you're against the law doesn't mean that you're an insane murderous criminal. Like, look at all of us. I think
Insane murderous criminals, yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I in the words of ICP, I kill 3 people a day. But no. You listen to us talk.
Can I get a piece of that?
Yeah, sure. listen
Thanks.
to any Dick Proles episode. We're not out here. We say in this episode all cops are bastards, and we're out here preaching against them. But listen to our argumentation. We're not out here saying like, yeah, after this we're gonna all go to the north side and shoot some brown people, right? That sounds really cool. No, we we preach exactly the opposite. We say that we need to stand by one another as workers and as people, and we all need to come together and work against these oppressive measures. But
Yeah, there's this really bullshit idea that people think human nature is just to inherently be selfish and shitty to people all of the time, right?
Mhm.
When that it like that says, if that's your opinion of like what the average person is like this terrible person, that says more about you than it does about human nature, I would think.
oh,
Like
100%.
if you think order would immediately break down if we somehow like replaced police with like some sort of non-violent intervention force, right? Like order would not immediately break down because most people aren't criminals.
Yeah, or murderous at that matter.
You can look at most disaster situations, and even though looting is generally talked about by the media,
Which is cool and good.
The reactionary media mostly.
it's not actually a very common thing at all. Usually people are maybe scrounging for supplies in places that are empty and deserted because they need them, but
Mhm.
the majority of the time people are actually coming together and helping one another when people need help. But
Yeah. We're not
yeah.
out just because someone is against the law doesn't mean they're out here to kill people. And if you think that being against authority means that you want to kill people, you're patently wrong. There I don't have any logic or facts exactly to back that up, but you're just patently wrong. If you believe that without someone, some big brother looming over you with a badge and a gun, that you're gonna go out and fucking break shit and kill people, no, people don't act like that. People don't want to just, well, some people might, but by and large, people just don't want to go out and break shit and kill people. We all just want to get along. We want to live. And you standing there with a badge, I I really have a reductionist argument for this, is that I don't need some fucking pig ass with a badge and a gun to tell me what's right and what's wrong. That's what it comes down to. I don't need some uniformed officer to point a gun at my face and say you can't do that. I I and a lot of people have a good moral compass. I don't need someone with a big stick to hit me over the head with it when I do something bad. I'm capable. We're humans. We understand right and wrong.
Mhm.
We don't need some dumbass government mandated force out there saying you can't do this or that. Wrong.
Do we
Or
want to move forward? Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, or even just looking at it being an unelected official or something that
Mhm.
is just applied for the job and went through like a 2-week training bid and got hired with very little sort of a background check. All it did was make sure they hadn't broken the law in the past
Yeah,
necessarily.
and that's
And
why
they suddenly have authority over everyone they see, even when they aren't on the job formally. They're able
yeah.
to whip out their authority and do whatever it is they decide. And so long, very, very rarely will they be given adequate repercussions for that in any sort of way.
Mhm.
It's stupid and sad and doesn't need to exist. And for the majority of human history, we have gotten by fine without that having to be in place at all.
Mhm.
And modern police states like this have only really cropped up recently as we talked with this type of thing. I'm sorry, I don't know. I was going to go on
No,
a big
that's
divergent rant, but
that's completely legitimate. And um um and the last thing before we go off of this section is one thing that I wanted to bring up is people saying the idea that people say that cops are good because they engage with the community and stuff. my question is why do you need a badge and a gun in order to, for instance, run a drug rehab program? You don't need the government authority, the state authority, and a badge and the legal authority to kill people to run a drug rehab program. You can
Or to do any of the number of things that like people in this country need that
Yeah.
police do not
yeah,
do.
like harm reduction.
Like they're not there to provide services.
No, they're
Or
not.
any of the things that would have a structural impact on actually, reducing crime, which would be lowering poverty.
Yeah, and the police inherently, as a tool of capitalism, are not interested in lowering poverty because that puts good, hardworking, honorable police officers out of jobs, and you don't want that. But they're not interested in reducing poverty and making communities better because it harms capital, and you can't have that in capitalism.
Well, and most of the powers that be don't want people to, or they don't want poverty to be reduced because people need to live in poverty and fear of not having basic necessities in order to continue working under an unjust system like this. But that's beside the point.
I think the Marxist term for that is like a reserve army of labor. But it's just striking me now. But we're not just talking about cops being bad for like shooting black and brown people in the streets, right? We're also talking about the fact that by being police officers, they have agreed to enforce and maintain unjust laws like drug laws we have in this country. That itself is enough for you to realize that cops are not on your side.
Yeah.
It's not just bad apples that are the issue. It's the fact that being a police officer and actually doing the job, even in the most sort of idealized and progressive, way you're supposed to do it, is still fucking bad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's actually what I view as kind of the meaning behind the phrase all cops are bad. Even if for some reason you have some cop in your family that you still love and hold dear, the institution itself is what is bad and needs to be eliminated. And people who, you can take that in a lot of different ways. People who participate in an institution like that are, generally not the best kind of people and can have a moral judgment be put on them. But at the same time, I participate in an unjust system called capitalism every day. And I don't think I'm bad for it. I don't really have a choice. But it doesn't change the fact that the institution itself is bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the key delineation to make there, Nick, is that
I don't have a choice, but the cop does.
that,
Yes.
and also you realize that the system you're participating in is bad. If police officers actually realized what they're doing is bad, they would, at the very
hopefully
least,
stop fucking doing it.
yeah, they would hang up their coat, turn in their badge and their gun, and be like, I can't do this anymore. But they don't.
Yeah.
And what does that say about them if we've talked about they uphold drug laws or they uphold property laws? They're clearly incapable of realizing morality as it exists. And even if morality is reduced to, is it okay to enforce violence upon people or not, they cannot answer that, or they cannot answer it in a way that is positive. The fact that they exist says that they are okay with using violence on people no matter what. And that's something that, in dismantling the establishment that is authority and cops, that we hope to do is to take away that power to say, can I kill someone? Is this legal? Or
Yeah, that's the thing we're trying to say, is that no one should have a license to kill.
yes.
And if you want to talk about things like gun control, like your first step should be disarming the police. Like they can maybe have a gun with like special units or like in the car or something, but having a gun on you changes your relationship to the community you're supposed to be protecting.
You appear as a force of authority as opposed to a force for good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what you are when you are a cop.